It's time for another Better Golf with Kevin and Jake Haime. Golfers, we're going to have a little fun here in 2020, try to make you better golfers as we always do. It's our first episode of 2020.
We're back.
Nice little break, although not a break for us from the game of golf. We've been teaching, going through our whole Christmas season and everything that entails. And just got home last night, literally, hit the tarmac from the PGA Golf Show where we, everything new and exciting in the world of golf. That was a cool trip.
Yeah, it was great. It was a whirlwind of golf and nice to get out of the snow for a little bit too, as Ottawa people. Nice. It was, good work as we say, but it was good. It was a interesting show this year. Some new stuff, a lot of the same from the year before. I wouldn't say it was the most dynamic PGA show that I've seen in the last 5 years, but it was a lot of interesting stuff.
Yeah, the economy seems strong. Down in Orlando, it was ridiculous. I was down there 3 weeks, so we had the PGA of America show is really a 7-day free-for-all of golf sharing and seminars and business contacts and new products. And, a lot of golfers who listen to the podcast or watch us may think it's all about, is that new driver going to give you 4 more yards? But there's so much more to it, the business of golf at this show. And it's really for us about contacting or reaching out to all of our partners from Gears Golf and Flight Scope and, all our different teaching aid vendors and seeing what's new and exciting in the world of golf to help people play a little better. So we'll talk about some of that today. I want to do that, Jake. We're also coming off the Waste Management, which is the craziest show in golf, and the screaming and yelling, and I think girls were flashing their boobs, and I mean the whole thing is a big party, and some would argue it's great for golf, some would argue it isn't. Where do you fall? I mean, you're a young guy. What do you think of the whole thing?
I'm solidly on it's great for golf.
Yeah?
100% on that side of it.
The boobs things particularly, or?
No, I mean the whole, but you have people at 4:30 in the morning running to the stands. The whole idea that it's not becoming of the game, I think, is a old, outdated argument. I think the game is whatever the fans and the players want it to be. I think golf is allowed to evolve. I don't necessarily think every tour event needs to be that, but I also think even if you go to the Waste Management and you're on hole 12 where it's not that corner of the property, it's like a normal golf event again. It's not all just booze fest, partying, madness. And I think that having a little bit of that where people have energy and they get excited for it, especially at a time of the year where the season isn't exactly kicking, I think it's a good thing for golf. It brings potentially more people to it, and I don't think excitement for the sport's a bad thing. I really don't.
Good stuff. We also are going to talk about, another neat link, Super Bowl last night, and my favorite ad was the Bill Murray ad for the Jeep about Groundhog Day, and when he got this Jeep, all of a sudden Groundhog Day was fun and exciting instead of being the same old thing. We're going to try to do that in 2020 again with golfers. This is my 31st year teaching golf. You're 27, Jake. You've been teaching golf for a handful of years, but you've been in it, hearing about it, learning it, trying to be a competitor, becoming a pro your whole life. So you've been in it. And I got to tell you, the Groundhog Day thing resonates with me so much. And it's quite intriguing coming off the PGA show, because the empty promises from the PGA show, kind of figuring out what things are really good, quantifiable pluses for golfers and what things are gimmicks. But the kind of salesman, schmarmy kind of side of the game in relation to, what people really need to do to play better. So today we're going to give a list of mistakes that we see. I don't know whether it'll be 7, 6, 10. It doesn't really matter, but we'll come up with a list of things that I think people really have to pay attention to. So between, talking about the golf show and some of the new products and just what people need to do, I hope we can help people play better. Specifically right now, if people have listened to our podcast since day one, they know that, we subdivide the game into so many different elements. There's so much to the game, and I call them silos, right? There's a bunch of different elements, from emotional intelligence to fitness, to restfulness, to nutrition, to short game, to short putts, to long putts, to swing. And people just aren't paying enough attention to everything to actually get better at golf. And that's really the name of this podcast, and it's the secret for everybody to become, happier with their golf, is to play better. So
Let's
we're
get
going to
into
do that
it
today. Let's get into it a little bit. Yeah. Oh, and the money race pool. Last little thing.
Oh, yeah.
For my rambly intro, we have to do the money race pool as well. It it's our 23rd year running the Kevin Haime season-long PGA Tour money race pool. Not the best name ever, but we're kind of stuck with that after 23 years. And we do it through the radio show on TSN 1200, and you pick your fellas in different tiers, and we've got 8 great prizes, at least a couple of $100 each. So the deadline is this Thursday, 10 a.m., which is actually 7 a.m. in California when the Pebble Beach starts. So people only have a few days to enter, so we'll talk about that as well. Favorite thing from the golf show was what? What was your favorite thing from the golf show?
Well, I think there's more than one category for favorite thing of the golf show. I want to clarify. I said it wasn't, maybe the most up year. I think that's frankly not because golf's in a bad place or the business is in trouble. I think some people might want to put a spin on it that way. I think the show is a little less dynamic more because a lot of the stuff had been there before. I think we're at such a good place with technology in golf right now, especially on the golf teaching side, that it's harder to have giant innovations. The only big new thing that I saw, which technically was there last year, but it seems to actually be solidly usable now, is that putt view system. And the other things like it. WellPutt has a version. A few different companies came out, which is AR putting studios. So using projection systems to have lines or targets or you name it on the ground, and both using it for...
Okay, hang on one second, because I got in crap. I haven't told you this, I got an email from TSN 1200 from the big boss saying AR and IR, don't assume people know what that is. So you just threw it out there too. I think your generation thinks AR is something that everyone will understand.
Okay, fair enough.
So we're going to slow that one down. I'm going to back that one off because I've got the email to show you that you have to be careful and remember who you're talking to. And we got a bunch of people who will have no idea what you're talking about.
Okay, so AR, augmented reality, is adding something into reality instead of doing what virtual reality is, which is creating a new one. So if you put something like an Oculus Rift or any sort of VR system on...
What's Oculus Rift?
It's the most popular engine for virtual reality. So you put the goggles on or whatever tool you use, and you're in a room and you're doing whatever, right? Lots of people have either heard or experienced that at this point.
Virtual reality, I think most people know.
Yes. Augmented reality is instead of going into a new space, it's adding onto our own. So the most popular attempt to try to do this that didn't quite work was Google Glass, where people put glasses on and it flips things in front of you and it shows you what's going on, but you can still see the world in front of you. It's more Minority Report screen than it is Total Recall.
Okay, so what is Top Tracer? Is that augmented reality?
Yeah, so Top Tracer would be augmented reality. Top Tracer would be hitting a golf ball, and then you're doing it through a screen and seeing your result. I mean, the most popular version of it that has from a business perspective is Pokemon Go. Everyone remembers a couple years ago when that went
everyone
crazy.
doesn't. Everyone doesn't.
Oh, a couple years ago, it was
does.
a social phenomenon. I mean, that thing went wild, and that would be augmented reality, where you're interacting.
You run around downtown Ottawa, and little Pokemon cartoony things poke up on your phone, and you go get them and get points. And they put all these little
that was a very bad description of what Pokemon Go was, but it's interacting with your world.
But I'm telling you that 80% of people listening to this show will have no idea what you're talking about. You and your brother, being young nerds, will totally get it, but anywho.
I don't know. I think the podcast crowd is savvy, but the point being that it's interacting with the world with either a screen in play or something to supplement reality instead of creating a new one.
Yeah, so we've got Top Tracer here. So you hit a golf ball. We all see it on the PGA Tour, and the line follows the ball. It makes watching the golf more entertaining. That line, everybody, isn't really there, that big red line.
No, I mean, exactly. And it's...
So we have it here. I mean, we're one of only 2 in Canada. You can come out here, you hit golf balls. It shows your flight. It shows your curvature. It shows your overall height and distance and everything. And then you can play target games, do whatever. I think it's what is it? It's the next big thing in the world. Are we all eventually, either on our reading glasses or in our sunglasses, going to have, messaging from advertisers come in front of us and all this augmented reality everywhere we go, right? You could walk into a store, and as you look at a sweater, the price can pop up in your glasses.
I think it's more likely. I think it's more likely that you'd pay for some sort of service that would negate advertising. But that's neither here nor there. We don't know. But yeah, I mean, the stuff is coming.
Yeah, and
I think that Putt View is. Or, again, companies like it, WellPutt, name your company, is an interesting step in that direction.
PuttView did it first.
Yes.
They're from Germany. It's a slick system. It is a $15,000 to $20,000 U.S. setup. But basically, they put a projector either on the ceiling or high up on your wall. And then it it shines the path of the putt that you need to hit to make it, right? So I don't know, what do we call it? Light or reflection or whatever it is, but it shows up the path of the putt from where you're putting to a hole, shows with the curvature and everything. And there's even an acceptable grid. And they do that on television as well on the PGA Tour, right? They show the putt, and if you hit it in between this speed and this speed, here's your kind of little pathway your golf ball
so
can take.
this allows you to do that. There's modes for it, but there's also modes for games on it, and you can set up holes. You know, the one obviously example they had there had holes drilled into the studio they were using. But if you don't have this holes in your foundation at home and you have a putting in your basement, you can set up your own holes from the light.
And it also shows the track of your golf ball. So you very quickly, will understand, I didn't hit that one hard enough. I didn't play enough break. I didn't do whatever. So it's a great feedback learning tool. So it basically, right on your putting green as you're putting, you hit the ball and the ball tracks. It follows it and creates a light beam behind it, and it shows you where you should have putted it, where you did putt it. I mean, I think we can figure that out without the lights, but it's a terrific looking learning tool.
Yeah, I think it's a good tool for explaining how, starting line works relative to actual aim and how the putt will break different with different speeds. And I even think, regardless of the teaching potential of something like that, from a practice perspective, it makes it more interesting. We were at the golf show with somebody the day that we were looking at it, and they were saying, I don't know, I think I'd get bored of hitting this putt over and over. But aren't we already doing that? I thought that was a weird point. Like, we're already putting the same putt over and over on a putting green.
Well, and the solution to that is WellPutt now have an electronic moving platform. So you get up there, and you can have 1, 2, 3 degrees of break.
Yes.
And you can putt from different sides. So they're already making these.
Well, in both systems, you can change your starting point and do
different,
any permutation of the putt you want. The point being that I think it makes practice more interesting, at least to a certain extent. It's also a good teaching tool. I also do think that, it'll get iterated in multiple forms coming up. It'll, I think, be something that's even better 5 years from now. We're just starting with this. But
yeah, so check it out, everybody. It's called Putt View. Another one of the companies is called WellPutt, WELL Putt. And they have a lot of mats and things, but they're all into this augmented reality projector system of putting studio, and that was a really new thing for sure.
Yeah, it's a long way to say that when you say what's the most exciting new thing at the show, that's to me the most exciting new thing that we saw.
It's interesting, Jake. The technology behind the equipment is kind of stagnant now. Everybody's at maximum conditions almost, and TaylorMade will tell you, well, the movable weight now slides this way, and we've moved this over here, but we're talking about brilliant engineers from all those major companies, from Ping and Titleist and TaylorMade and Callaway. They're all kind of stuck in a box, and they're trying to move stuff around to make things a little bit better.
I think right now we're in era is the wrong word, but a streak of refinement more than a streak of huge advancement.
And it seems boring because we're coming off 20 years of incredible advancements where we now have PGA Tour pros hitting gap wedges 160 yards.
Yeah, I think what's happened is that we've gotten so close to the box that the USGA and RNA has put on the club companies that we're
not close to the box. We're at the edge of the box, right?
Yeah. I mean, so we just can't do. I don't want to say we can't do that much more. I'm sure they can, but you can't do that much more with the current materials we have.
I think Volvic introduced an illegal ball, didn't they?
I didn't see it if they did, but
yeah,
I think
Volvic, a non-conforming. I always laugh at that legal thing. It's like a policeman's going to run out of a little bush somewhere and arrest you if you do something wrong on the golf course. It's a non-conforming golf ball. It's a little smaller and heavier, so it goes farther for people who don't play in tournaments and don't care.
Yeah, what do you think as a golf pro? I mean, we're competitive people. What do you think of that? I actually, you know what? If you never have any intention to play with a tournament, I don't know that I have a huge problem with it. I, as a normal golfer, wouldn't do it because I'd still want to play the game.
It's interesting. It's an interesting question. Arnold Palmer, who was, the voice of the USGA in so many ads over the years, Callaway came out with a non-conforming driver at one point, and they kind of backed it off, and negotiated with the USGA and the RNA as to what the conforming things would be, and it kind of settled itself out. But yeah, I think somebody's going to show up with a driver or a ball that goes 50 yards farther, and if average, beer and a hot dog at the turn guys who never play in tournaments embrace it, or older people embrace it, or people with not a lot of strength, then we'll see what happens.
Yeah,
but I think Volvic did. I think Volvic did it. They said it's non-conforming, it's heavier and smaller, it goes farther, and if it's for you, great. I don't have a major problem with it. I do think, other than the BS of some guy telling you I hit it 350, but he's got a non-conforming club, and so there's a little bit of augmented reality in that case. Like, really, buddy? You're not really doing it because you're using cheater equipment, but I don't think it really matters.
Yeah, then we get into the whole bifurcation thing, which I'm not a huge bifurcation supporter on the tour versus the normal populace. But yeah, it's an interesting topic. I'm probably going to flip-flop on what I think about it four times.
What about gear? So we've got here in our studio what I think, still, we're 4 years in now, it's state-of-the-art. There's nothing like it in golf still. There are some other 3D motion capture companies. Nothing has yet to surpass it. For 4 years now, we've put hundreds of people into this avatar suit, created an avatar of them using markers and 8 cameras, high-speed video.
Yeah, it's really the best thing you can do for your golf game.
Anything new with gears this year?
There's some new stuff coming down the pipeline. It always feels like we're always saying that, but that's a good thing. I mean, it means that they continue to improve.
I know some of their software is showing more side bend. I seem to hear this a lot more, Jake, which side bend is really staying in posture as you rotate to a finish.
So it's a more technical way to discuss how you stay in posture. So one thing that happens a lot is we talk about whether you move your head up and down. And the problem with using that as your only metric of whether you stayed in posture is depending on where your pelvis is, and if your lower body is moved around, your head could stay in that space helmet or that bubble that you talk about when you teach, but the angle of your spine can still be different than it started.
Correct.
And so that causes problems too. That's early extension. It's something we hear a lot about, guys either thrusting their hips the wrong way and getting themselves into poor positions.
Think about it. So Jake said space helmet. Think about it. If someone's holding onto your hair or your hat, so you keep your head still, in theory, keeping your head still in golf, keep your head still, is a big teaching point. But if your pelvis is moving forward and backward and side to side and all over the place, you're like a reverse. You could be like a reverse bobblehead where your head stays still and everything else moves. So side bend is a way of checking numbers to maintaining posture as you rotate around your spine in posture.
Yeah. So we measure instead the angle of the bend. Obviously, when you're standing over the ball in posture, that would be forward bend. But technically, as you turn your chest, let's say you're turned 90 degrees, if your back is at the same angle, you're not bending forwards anymore. You're technically bending sideways, more like a side plank, right? So that is part of why everyone has, or a lot of people, I should say, have trouble maintaining posture, because you're technically replacing a forward bend with a side bend in the middle of the swing, and not everybody finds maintaining the exact same angle in that process an easy thing to do. And so
some based on a lack of understanding, some based on a lack of flexibility, some based on even things like scoliosis and curvatures in spine, whatever it can be, right? Poor balance. Poor strength in your core, so you can't stay in balance. There's a million reasons. I'll tell you what, it's not a very exciting time to be in the world of buying equipment, because we're at the edge of the box, if you will. But it's bloody well an exciting time to be in teaching the game and learning the game. And when you look at, gosh, Jake, when I think about that 31st year teaching golf, that's at least my 30th golf show, because I used to go with your grandfather, who was at the Hunt Club, and I go as a teenager. I mean,
it's probably your 40th.
When I think of me teaching golf when I was your age, 25 years ago, and what I knew versus what we know now, that's one of the big mistakes people are making. If we get to that list, and we'll get there pretty soon, but people just don't have enough understanding or don't take the time to learn. It is, and we're always on this tricky little space where it sounds like, oh, here comes the podcast. They're going to tell everyone to book a lesson with us and give them money. But, from a person who's dedicated their lives to trying to help people play better golf because of a passion for golf, and there is the money business end to it, but it's more about if people would just learn. There's so much information. We've all got these high-speed cameras in our pockets.
Yeah, it's a funny
thing. You
can
can slow-mo your own swing. You can totally understand the golf swing between the biometrics and the Titleist Performance Institute and the 3D motion capture and the launch monitors. We know exactly what people should be doing now, and it's pretty easy to fix them. And it's pretty easy for them to then tape themselves and work at it. And yet people will just keep slicing the ball.
Well, it's actually a funny thing. You're right. It seems potentially sales pitchy to say learn more about your swing, but theoretically, especially people listening to a podcast like this are passionate about the game, and some are, you could argue, addicted to it.
Yeah.
The way some people play golf, but they won't take the time to learn more about how to be good at the game. It's
that?
a weird
What is
paradigm.
That? They'll buy another $700. I think there's a laziness and a fear and an insecurity factor to it, and a resistance to really dedicating themselves to working hard at something. It's way easier to buy another driver than to say, I'm going to look at myself on video. Yeah. It's like going on a diet, right? I'm going to work hard and throw myself out there. And if I fail, it's because I either didn't work hard enough or I didn't have the ability to do it. And that's scary to a lot of people. A lot of people would rather say, I just hit it and play and it's for fun and that's that, and go buy another driver, because it's that once you have the understanding, there's a less excuse to working at it hard, right?
Yeah,
I totally get that some people just want to play golf for fun and whack the ball around. I'm not saying everybody should grind it out. There's a great comparison.
But hold on, you also don't need to grind it out to learn more about your golf swing and work better. This is, I think, part of the problem is people only think that if you take a lesson, that means you're trying to be a scratch. I mean, we're just talking about gaining any more information to make it a little more fun. I don't think it has to be grinding it out. There are going to be people who take it seriously and do that.
Don't you find the food and exercise industry a great mirror of the golf industry? I mean,
well, it's even more extreme, but yeah, it is.
Well, you've got to commit to going on a diet or going to the gym to get in shape, and it makes you feel better, and it's better for you and everything. Just like your golf, if you practice and have the information and work at it, you'll enjoy your golf more if you're playing better. Now, the qualifier there is that people need to want to get better, and my argument is everybody, when they're over a ball, want to hit the ball better.
I think at some point, I think at some level, everybody does.
But the diet thing's the same, right? Some people just won't. They don't have it in them to work hard enough to do it, or and I don't want to even make that sound like a bad thing, but some people won't commit to the effort,
and that's where I actually think I think it's where some of it's different. Some people just don't care about the diet stuff. I think deep down, everyone
some people
cares.
don't care about the golf stuff. They just want to go out and whack the ball.
If you call yourself a golfer, I think you do to some extent. And that's where I don't want to make it this. That's why I take pause and people say, I don't want to grind it out. It doesn't have to be that serious, but a little bit of information goes a long way. To bring it back to what we were talking about on the gears front, right? I think that's why I say it's the best thing you could do for your golf swing, in my opinion. Because what it does is it takes an hour and a half or a couple hours to do, but then you get a objective version of what your golf swing is and where the best opportunities to work at it on, and then at your own pace you can attempt to work on it. And I think that by doing something like that, even though it seems maybe intimidating at the get-go, although trust me, it really isn't. It's just fun. Every single person we put through it comes in and goes, "Oh, that's really cool," within the first 2 minutes of being in the suit. I think it's the best thing to check where you are, and makes it easier to be honest with yourself, right?
Bigger conversation, the understanding thing. I just say, like, people come for lessons, I don't change my grip.
Yeah, it's a waste of time.
But yeah, I don't really want to discuss that. But yes, you're right. An inability or an unaccepting of change because, again, either don't want to put the work in or they're scared that they'll deteriorate or whatever it is. But my bigger statement to people is you have to have an understanding of what your grip's causing. Do you really know if your hand is underneath the club, what that's causing in your golf? And what other compensations you have in the swing because that changes your club face a certain way because the way your hands work.
Yes.
Like understanding that if I put my bottom hand, the lower one, so the right hand for a right-handed golfer, if I hook that underneath, so my palm is under the club, we call that a strong grip. As you swing that golf club, your hand will roll over. It has to, into a more natural, neutral state, so it'll close the club face. Once people understand that that hand in that position, from an unarguable state, as you swing that club around, it will rotate the club closed. There's nothing you can do to prevent it other than other compensations. Once people understand that, they've got a little more of an acceptability to say, hey, I better move my hand a bit then.
I think most people do.
So once they get the understanding of what their flaws are preventing them from being able to do, they'll do it. But the first step, that big mistake, is just not having the understanding or not wanting to go for that lesson, or, and that's a biggie for people. And people who play for 20 years and just keep slicing the ball and don't really know why they slice it. I kind of train you guys to start with that, right? If a person has a certain ball flight, you say to them, do you know why you do that? And if they can't, and how many people say, no, I don't know why that happens?
Most
It's
people,
most of them, right?
Most people don't understand, right? Most people don't even understand the basic mechanics of what a slice is. And it's one of those things where, a lot of the time I'll sit down with somebody, I'll almost grab a pen and paper, and I'll draw out, here are the options of what a golf ball could do, and here's how they happen.
Ball flight
right?
laws, right? Ball flight laws.
Super basic ball flight laws. And I even say to people, I don't really care if you remember all the options here and exactly how this works, but you got to understand, this option here is what you're doing, and this is why it happens, and what chance do you have to fix it if you don't know what's going on? It's like anything in life.
It's never going to stop.
If you look at, I like cars, but I'm not a car guy. So when I open the hood of an engine, if I don't understand at all what's going on, I have no hope to fix it. No amount of trial and error will fix it, right? I'll mess things up, or I'll just make different problems pop up instead of the ones I have. And your golf swing's the same way. You gotta, we said at the start of the show we're gonna start with mistakes. I guess we're getting into what the first mistake is, right? Which is, people don't pop open the hood and actually learn anything about what their golf swing is doing. They just hit golf balls and try to guess their way into correcting it.
Move further from it, move the ball more forward, bend over one day, get a little closer to the ball another day. They're just guessing, and they don't really understand. So having an understanding of we're done that one. We're not getting into it. We're done that one. The next one to me is sticking with it then. So first you got to understand what's wrong. Then you got to work at it.
Absolutely.
And I call it the shiny ball trick. And this is the PGA of America Golf Show. What trick can I get here? What club can I buy? What teaching aid will fix me? I had an interesting thing happen. My roommate from college showed up at this golf show. Great player, won the Western Junior. His son was there, 16-year-old kid, working with Jim McLean down in Miami. They got a lot of money, so he's working with Jim McLean down in Miami. And we're going around, and I said to the young man, what are you looking for? A putting aid. And I said, well, what do you want to fix? And he said, my putting. And I'm like, well, whoa, it doesn't work like that. Like, there is a million putting teaching aids, and each one will attack a certain thing. What's wrong with your putting stroke? Is it your rhythm? Is it your setup? Is it your alignment? Is it the pace of your stroke? Is it, what's wrong? Is it moving your wrists? It can be 100 things, and a teaching aid will fix that. But that shiny ball idea of fixing something, I'm just going to fix it. Or if I buy this club, everything will be better. If I buy whatever teaching aid, whether it's Putt View or, that magically everything will be better. And instead of having the information and then kind of working at it instead of just thinking a trick will work. Like, Jim, yesterday I played with Jim, and Jim stands closer to the ball than me. So I stood close to the ball, and I had a pretty good back nine. So now I'm going to start standing closer to the ball.
Yeah.
Well, why are you standing closer to the ball? What does that do to your swing? Does it change the path? Does it change the... you need to understand this stuff. So golfers just need to engage a little more in self-reliance. You do need a golf pro to help you explain it, but then you need to be a little more structured and honest with where you actually are, and just get yourself understanding and a little kind of dedicated, structured work, and you will get better. There's no question you'll get better. Back to the diet thing. If you eat a little better, if you understand what's good for your body, and you eat a little better and exercise a little more, things will get a little better. It's just the way it works.
Well, to draw the parallel even further to the diet industry, and this is where I think the best parallel is, it's patience. It takes time, right? Let's say you put on 10 pounds in a couple of years. It took you 2 years to put the weight on. You think you're going to get it off in 2 weeks? People want, and like you said, the shiny ball aspect, people want those quick fixes.
Yeah.
But even if you find a teaching aid that might be the perfect thing to fix what you're
it's not going to change in
a day,
2 buckets of balls,
right?
Yeah.
So the point of the teaching aid is that you should be repeating with it to make the new version of what you're doing the
you
new
like
reality.
That 10,000 repetitions thing to create a habit? Do you think that's good? So that's
10,000. I think it's too simple because I think how far off.
That's 100 buckets
is,
of balls, by the way.
Yeah. Well, I think how far off something is from your norm, and the way that you work on something will change that number. I think the 10,000 is a convenient way to say it, but I think the principle there's something to the principle of it.
Yeah, to give people hope, though, I think they can put a teaching aid on their putter, and the first putt can be better. So
Absolutely.
It doesn't take 10,000 to make it better. What I think the 10,000 is about is that subconscious habit. So that is now your putting stroke. You don't have to even think about it anymore. Like if you stood open and for 100 buckets of balls at 100 balls, you use that alignment aid. At the end of that time, you could take the alignment aid off, and that alignment would be your new norm.
Yes.
Right? So I think you need that many repetitions to create a subconscious new norm. But I think you can put a teaching aid on and play better right away. And if you're working at it and focusing properly.
Yeah, because it'll give you the feeling of what to recreate.
Correct.
Right? It'll give you the feeling of what it feels like to be right. And it might not feel natural. And I think for some people, that's a hurdle they have to get over, is you make a change and it doesn't feel natural, so you don't want to keep doing it. A great example, I mean, I'll use one for myself. I have a little bit of scoliosis in my lower spine. It's minor. It doesn't cause a lot of problems. But it means I like to sit my hips open because the bottom of my spine curves in a way that I'm more comfortable that way. So I have a little shift of my hip that I do every time I stand over a golf ball. To this day, I've been doing it for years since I learned about the problem. It doesn't feel 100% as natural
But if
as
you
just
didn't
standing
know you had that, if you didn't take the time to realize that your hips are open, it's always going to affect your ball flight. It's
100%,
always going to affect your,
which is why
your
I do it.
kinematic unwind, everything,
Yeah,
right?
which is why I do it, even though, I mean, it would feel more comfortable just to stand as my body's standing. And for the record, I'm not saying I feel uncomfortable every time over the golf ball. It's just a quick little switch.
Number three, let's move it along. But people really, and this is an important one, they only practice in the springtime, right? So
Yeah, well, that's the Groundhog Day aspect we were talking about.
Well,
Every year.
Groundhog Year for me, we're super busy in March and April and May, and in September it can be a beautiful day out, 22 Celsius, and there's 3 people hitting golf balls. So creating an understanding that every ball you hit better with a better grip will make that grip feel better to you and will make you a better player. And whether you start that process March 1st or you decide in September, from now on, I'm going to try to change where my hand is on that club. It's productive. I even say to people, if you take a lesson in October and I teach you ball position, you don't forget it over winter. You don't have to wait till next spring to take a lesson.
That's a big fallacy,
on ball
isn't it?
position. It really is.
People think, well, if I start now over the winter, I'll forget and go back to my old habit. But you're not giving yourself enough credit. First of all, like you're not all of a sudden going to go, squirrel, I forgot where everything I did, what's going on. Like you're going to remember what you're working on. And it's better to have done some reps than not done some reps.
It makes me feel more calm when I'm over the ball that I'm working on something productive. So it blends into that information thing and the working at it thing. There is no right time or wrong time, more importantly, to work at something. And I can show you my revenue numbers for the last 30 years. And we're so much busier in the spring than the fall. It's crazy. I know there's a passion, there's an anxiousness here in Canada because you've been locked up all winter. I get that, the enthusiasm to play more. But the idea that just, hitting balls in the spring is another one of those big mistakes people make. They've got to just think of their golf game as an ongoing thing during their cycle of life. And whenever you kind of improve things, it's a positive. So that's another one.
Yeah, the way you said that, it's not the mistake to hit the balls in the spring. It's the mistake to not hit the balls in the fall.
Correct.
Right? Make it a more consistent effort, even if that means you might hit a few less balls in the spring because you're going, well, I can't keep that pace up. Develop a pace of practice that's good for you and maintain it year-round if you can.
Too many full shots, another one.
As part of that practice,
people listen to our first podcast. It might be a little rough, but if people listen to our first podcast, I think I called that one, or we called that one, 7 silos, right?
Yes.
So in my teaching, over the years, I've developed these elements to a complete player through our junior coaching. You've got your ball striking or your swing. You've got your short game, all your little shots around the green, not on the green, but around the complex of the green, from bunkers to chips to pitches to flop shots, all that stuff. Then you've got your putting. You've got your short putts where alignment and technique is so important to make that 3-footer. You've got your longer putts where you introduce feel and a little bit of artistry into it. So you've got putting games, different elements to that. Then you've got your overall health, which includes strength and fitness and restfulness and nutrition and all of that. You've got your equipment getting fitted properly. Then you've got your decision-making. which includes some of the mistakes people are making here, but even stuff like, should I go for the green or lay up? That's your mental game. And then your emotional game, which is where your uncle is. That's his lane, right? The EI stuff John works so much with, which includes things like focus, self-confidence, resilience, self-reliance, all the different emotional elements. Do you get scared on the tee? Why are you nervous? Back to people don't have an understanding. They're always nervous on the first tee because they don't know why they slice it. So they can't even fix it. And it creates this anxiousness in them. So you've got all these 7 silos. So the next mistake people make is all they do is hit balls. They think that the game of golf is about how well they hit balls, which there might be an irony here to people because we make money with people hitting buckets of balls. So it's this paradigm is a good thing for us, but you got to work on everything. You got to sit down and work on all the elements and figure out which ones you're good at and which ones you're weak at. And people they flat out hit too many balls in the spring and they flat out just hit too many full shots. That's all they do to work on their golf game.
Yeah, I mean, full ball striking is the easiest thing to identify a problem with because it's the most visceral thing of the game. You know, when you hit a bad shot, you notice it more. You know, we see that a lot with, for example, people evaluating their own putting. They'll miss a putt by 4 inches of the hole. You know, they'll miss the putt by a significant amount. They go, "Oh, I almost made it." And if you understand how the mechanics work, no, you didn't. You weren't even close to making it, and it was a straight putt, so it wasn't the break that you misread. It was you missed the technique by that much. That's the same as hooking a drive into the woods, but it doesn't feel the same way as hooking a drive into the woods. Mm-hmm. And I think that, you know, obviously...
Same goes with making a bad decision. Same goes with not, you know, well, we don't want to get into other ones yet, but anything you don't do properly is just as important as putting a bad swing on a driver.
Yeah, so obviously, you know, ball striking is an important component of the game, and if you're not at a certain level with it, it's hard to really get good at it. But the amount of time you dedicated to it is, agreed, too high in proportion to the...
Yeah, I also think there's a fallacy with golfers. They think that they have to do better than they do.
It's a major one.
There are... Well, the stats on tour, right? The average, like Phil Mickelson's below 50% on fairways hit. And there's guys on the PGA Tour who hit 60% of greens in a year, and they make $1 million a year on the PGA Tour.
Yeah, the best players,
you don't need to perfect your ball striking to enjoy golf and get better at it. And I think people think the other thing that's part of that, Jake.
Well, no, but you know what? Ironically, or I guess coincidentally, the reason why everyone thinks that way is because they haven't worked on the other parts of their game. So their short games aren't good enough to bail them out of the mistakes that they're bound to have. That's the difference, right? The tour pros understand that you have to work on every aspect. So they do miss greens, but then they get up and down when they miss the green. And most people at a golf course, they miss the green and they probably wind up making a bogey because they're either not pitching it close enough or making a putt they should be making.
Yeah, this really might even link into the understanding thing again, that PGA Tour pros understand strengths and weaknesses and where they need to practice. It's way more important to be able to make a 3-footer than to hit every fairway. It's way more important to get good in the bunker than it is to, because you're going to miss, statistically, you're going to miss 30% of greens.
Yes.
So if you can get up and down 25% of the 30%, you're going to be a way better golfer than if you can just hit a couple more fairways.
And these are assuming that you're tour pros. If you're the average Joe, you're statistically going to miss more greens. So it's even more important proportionally to your game to have a pretty good short game. But it's one of those things that, again, people don't look in the mirror and become self-aware enough about how golf works for them. And they think that if they just chase the secret, they will hit the ball better.
All right, so the next mistake is tied into the same one. So if that mistake is too many full swings.
Yes.
The other part of that, subsection, if you will, or its own number, too many big swings. I mean, the idea in golf is to be in balance, be aligned and in balance, and have timing and rhythm between the moving of the body and the arms. The best way to do that is with smaller motions, to groove your body to move the way you want it to move. Hitting driver after driver is like the worst thing you can do. And my analogy is always the changing of the skier. The ski coach, the teacher, or even just yourself, you'll always go to the smaller hill to work on your technique of turning and going through the moguls or whatever. It is ludicrous for someone who wants to change the way they pivot into a mogul, or, you know, to go to the steepest hill on the mountain, and they'll be going so fast that it's just a blur and they end up just wiping out and having a yard sale. You can't you can't change the way your body moves at the highest speed it can move. I mean, what you need to do, so if you're hitting a driver, your old habits will keep coming into play because that club's moving 100 miles an hour. Whereas if you hit little 3/4 wedges, you can really put your arms in the place you want to put them. You can feel what it's like to speed your arms up, to slow them down. You can change the way your hips move. You can work on your side bend. You can do whatever you need to do to become a better player at slow speed. Now, eventually, you crawl, then you walk quickly, then you jog, then you run, then you run a marathon. Eventually, you're hitting those drivers to see what the result is of all your work. But practice is not about hitting a bunch of long clubs. Practice is about making your body do what you want it to do. And that's another huge mistake golfers make. That driver comes out of the bag right away. And they think if they hit a driver 1,000,000 times, they'll hit it 1,000,000 times better. But if there's no understanding, and if they're making the same mistake every time, nothing will ever improve. It's Groundhog Day. We're back to Bill Murray.
Yeah, not to mention, I mean, such an intrinsic part of good golf is your tempo, that the fact that when you wail on driver you don't practice tempo is another completely different but tied in point to it. I mean, a great example, Tony Finau, I mean, he just lost in a playoff at the Waste Management, but almost won this week. And everyone always comments about how they don't understand how he hits it so far with what looks like a 3/4 swing. It's because you'd hit it farther if he had a bigger swing. He's just learned that at that length of swing and tempo, he hits it far enough to be in play on the tour, but he hits it the best, right? He found the tempo and the speed that works the best for him, even though he's obviously capable of more.
Yeah, they did that in Golf Digest last year, didn't they, with him? He took some, or was that on YouTube I saw?
No,
he took some full swings and hit it
on
quite a
Instagram.
bit farther. But
yeah, on Instagram, he did a thing. He and his coach, just for fun, tried to get to 200 miles an hour of ball speed, which is world long drive numbers. I mean, that is staggering. And he did it when he was trying to go full bore, but he doesn't hit it straight, so he doesn't do it. And people get onto the driving range, and I know we just made this point, so I don't want to rehash.
Yeah,
the
be
exact same
careful.
point.
I don't want people to think that if they make a half swing.
No, you have to be committed to the action, right? I'm making a good clarification. Tempo and how hard you swing are two separate notes, right? Tempo is how you swing, the rhythm of the motion. Speed of swing is how fast a swing is. And what I'm saying is that Tony, by slowing it down a little bit, has better tempo, better transition. He's able to hit the ball more squarely. So he hits the ball plenty far with that golf swing.
Yeah, it's also, he's practiced that 1,000,000. It worked for him probably when he was a young kid. He kept doing it. It's now his kind of DNA golf swing stamp, if you will. That's his golf swing.
Yeah, for sure.
So he's not going to change it. But it's clearly, he shot 62, I think, on Saturday, a swing that is incredibly repeating for him, incredibly dependable, and incredibly serviceable. So he doesn't need to try to swing better.
No,
or
so
bigger.
So the thing that everybody can learn from that, and it ties very well into your point about, people need to do soft swings to learn where their body should be and make changes. Slower, more rhythmic swings to learn what it feels like to strike the middle of the face and have quality ball striking is equally as important.
Yeah, if you control your body and you control the path of the club and you synchronize those two together, that's the game, right?
Absolutely.
That controls the club face, which controls the ball flight. It's really a ball flight game. Higher, lower, curving one way, curving the other. And if you can't control your body, you can't control the way the club face hits the ball and the way the ball flies. So it's really all about body control. So lots more attention to littler shots, shorter shots, lots more attention to around the green, on the green, lots more attention to every silo in your game, and less drivers. Less practice in the spring, solely, and less drivers. And what do we see? We see people whacking drivers in the spring, year after year after year.
Yeah, again, it's not less practice in the swing. It's less fall off from your practice in the spring.
Yeah.
Practice all year.
Yeah, I love people to practice as much as they do in the springtime every day. Like you said, though, lives get in the way a little bit. All right, the other thing is, listen, mistakes people make, Jake, this list could be very long, but we're keeping it down to 6 or 7 or 8 here. Another one is they don't give themselves enough time to do things. I'd rather people did a little less, but did it properly. And I think about game day. people get to the golf course 5 minutes before they tee off. They whack a couple of putts, they do their shoelaces up and tee off. If you really want to work at playing better, you've got to prepare properly. Get your body loosened up and warmed up and figure out what your swing feels like that day to play better. So, preparing to play better, practicing better, hit less buckets, but hit them more carefully. Just spending more time preparing and focusing and paying attention is really important. And, I guess the mistake to me is the game day. Just running to the course, playing, and then racing home. Instead of saying, okay, every day I play this year, I'm going to warm up for 40 minutes. I'm going to, start with my wedge and go through my driver. Then I'm going to hit a few chips and pitches. Then I'm going to hit a few putts to know the greens, and then I'll tee off. So I'm ready to play. And I would even ask people to think about the course and their strategy, how they're going to play that course a little bit that day. Prepare properly. Get ready. Don't just stand on that first tee and, with this stiff kind of not ready golf swing.
Okay, so I have a very fair question that
Sure.
most people are probably thinking. Kevin, I don't have the time for that. How do you deal with that?
That's my point. I'd rather people play less. Say, okay, instead of 3 times a week, I'm going to play 2 times a week. But, on those days, instead of taking 4 hours, I'm going to take 5. And I'm going to warm up properly. And I think people would find it makes an incredible difference. Same with buckets of balls. Instead of whacking out 2 buckets with your driver, hit 1 bucket and pitch at targets. And then work through your swing. Hit to 1 flag on the range area, then hit to another flag, and then try to hit a few draws, then try to hit a few fades.
Yeah, more dynamic
Be way
practice.
more thoughtful about what you're doing, right? Which, again, can go into on the course. Thinking about, should I lay up here? Should I go for it? Should I leave my ball on the left side of the green, the right side of the green? All the elements that go into making a better golfer. But the preparation and the thoughtfulness is really critical. And that's another thing I just don't see people doing and never have. And it doesn't change, right? We've got all these mistakes that people keep doing over and over again.
Yeah, of all of the mistakes, it's the one that I understand the most because time is such a factor in that issue that people don't feel like they have the time. But it's one of those things that if you care enough about how you play, you have to find a way to make that part of the process to really improve, right?
Why not commit to something?
Everyone has a story of the day they slammed the trunk and played well, and hey, I didn't even warm up that day, and I felt so loose, and it was great. But that's not going to happen very often, and it's not going to be your norm. And, actually, no one understands not having time to play more than me because I don't play much in the summer anymore because we're so busy teaching, which is unfortunate. But if you want to play well and you want to practice well, quality over quantity. As stupid and cliche as that is, it's quality over quantity, right? And, I understand, but maybe instead of playing 18 holes, after work, play 9. And that seems less fun, but you'll be better.
Think about what will make you a better player and what will be the more rewarding thing. You're right, Jake. Maybe, going and picking your kids up and after work and going out after dinner and playing 9 holes with your son or your daughter and dropping a few balls and pitching them and just doing that might be better for you as a golfer than just trying to get that Saturday morning tee time and racing out there and getting home by 11.
I would also argue that that's more fun. Yeah. I would say that
find what's right for you, but make it productive. Again, make it productive. You change something.
Yeah, I mean, you can boil this whole list down to, frankly, being honest with yourself and engaging with your process more dynamically.
Being thoughtful.
Right? A better engagement with your own process. I think a lot of people hear us say, here's the top 6 mistakes or top 10 or pick your list of mistakes golfers make, and it sounds cynical, and here's all the things you're doing wrong, like a school lecture. But it's really more of here are the things that we notice as a trend that people aren't doing, and here are your opportunities to engage with your golf game differently in very accessible, easy-to-do ways that can make you better over time.
Well, there is a great frustration of what we do for a living, Jake, because we all know, coaching fixes people or fixes them. That doesn't sound right. Coaching makes them better players.
We actually don't fix people. We help people fix themselves.
But being thoughtful. So, at a golf lesson, you sit down with the person and say, okay, What's the strength of your game? What's the weakness? You ask them those questions that they maybe haven't thought to ask themselves. Do you warm up properly? How many times a week do you play? What's the worst part of your game? What's the best part of your game? Describe your style on the course. What makes you nervous on the course? What makes you anxious? What gives you confidence? If you force people to ask all those questions, they start to figure it out. How many drives do you hit in a bucket of balls? How many 7-irons? How often do you work on rhythm in your swing? How often do you work on this? All of these kind of coaching elements where you really develop a relationship with the golfer are the things that really make the difference for them, right?
Yes.
And, the mistakes is just a way of coining it. It's not to emphasize the negative, but it is certainly, and this is again back to my Super Bowl ad with Bill Murray, the Groundhog Day of teaching this game or trying to help people play better. My great frustration is it's not that hard to get better at golf. It really is not.
No, it just takes
time. If you
time.
get a little information and you practice the right things and you're a little more thoughtful and organized, you can definitely, every single person listening to this podcast can get better, but they've got to change. They can't keep doing the Golf Town driver and the play Saturday morning and they hit a bunch of buckets of drivers in the spring thing and the trying the trick their buddy tells them. All of these things keep happening.
Yeah.
All right, last one. Number 7 for today, and then we're going to...
Well, hold on. I want to make a quick point because
Sure.
people conflate time and difficulty. That's one thing to understand. What we're saying is if you're patient, it's not that hard. It just takes time. Just because something takes a while doesn't mean it's difficult, right? It just takes repetition and time. And if you put the effort in, it might take someone a month because they're hitting more balls than you, but you can do the exact same change in a year or 2 years or whatever, as long as you're chipping at the process
Sure.
over time, right? But just because it takes a while doesn't mean it's going to be hard. Enjoy it and do it.
Yeah, that's the fun of golf.
Yeah.
The journey is more fun than the destination. That's the challenge of the game. That's the fun of the game. Work at all those elements. Figure out where your weaknesses are. Work on them a little bit. That's why golf's like an onion with layers and layers and layers to it. It's
very Shrek of you.
Fantastic game. It is very Shrek of me. Last thing, you don't reflect enough. You don't figure out what's wrong. You don't learn from mistakes. I love journaling. We do it with our junior coaching kids. After you play a round of golf on your way home, everybody, go through the round in your mind. Figure out why you made those bogeys and doubles. Think about what caused those bogeys and doubles. If you hit it in the right woods all day, what's wrong with your golf swing that you have to go figure out to not do that? If you 3-putted 5 times, why are you missing those putts? If you always came up short with your pitch shots, what about your technique is causing that to happen? Or your mindset, where you're not taking the proper swing to get the ball to the hole? The answers are right there. They're always there, but you've got to reflect and think about them to really get better. And a lot of times it's emotions. I was nervous. I got to be honest with myself. I was pooping my pants out there. I was nervous and I choked. A lot of times it's decisions. Why did I try to hit the green punching out of the woods? Why didn't I lay up? A lot of times it's my equipment's lousy. The guys I'm playing with are hitting it 20 yards past me because my driver's 10 years old. A lot of times it's swing dynamics. A lot of times it's short game. A lot of times it's putting. You've got to reflect. Journaling makes sure it happens, but it's just a question of being a little thoughtful after you play. How many times? I've played so many times, Jake, with someone in a pro-am or something, and they miss a putt, and they're surprised at their own golf course. So you've been a member here 20 years, and you misread that putt? It actually, to me, Groundhog Day again. How is that possible that in 20 years you haven't figured out how that putt breaks? But you see it all the time. People miss.
Yeah, well, part of that also, though, is people miss a putt because they hit the putt wrong. And then they go, I must have read it wrong, because they won't admit that they made a
mistake. But if they just sit down and figure it out, right?
Yeah.
But listen, you can say that if you want, but if I go somewhere and I'm playing in a pro and I say, how does this putt break? And a guy says, oh, it's a little right to left. And I putt it and it breaks right. It's like, you've been a member here 20 years and you don't know how that
Oh, yeah, that
breaks.
stuff happens all the time. The other one I love, the other example I love, and a lot of people probably have done this themselves, is, we'll say to them, if you chip with a pitching wedge and it lands here, how far will it roll? And people's answer is, I don't know. And my reaction...
They've been chipping with an 8-iron for the last 30 years.
But even if I do say, if I hit an 8-iron from here to this point exactly, how far will it roll? And they go, I don't know. Well, then why are you doing that? Like, how does this work? It's just a matter of...
It's fascinating.
It's just a matter of paying attention.
It's flight to roll ratios, right? We teach 10-year-olds this. If
Yes.
you chip with an 8-iron with this technique and this stance, the ball will fly 1 part. It'll roll 3 parts. That's what it'll do every single time you do it. So if you have a situation where you have 1 part flight and 3 parts roll, you use X club. It just works like
a 9-iron for the record, everybody. If you're keeping
1
track,
to
that's
3.
a 9-iron.
Yeah, I'm just chatting here. But figuring out, hey, maybe I'm using my wrong club to chip because it only rolls 1 part and flies 1 part, right? Instead of a 1 to 3, 1 to 4, whatever it is.
Now, on the
All
flip
of it is
side-
reflection, and it's basically, Jake, our entire list of 7 here is about getting organized,
Yes.
being more thoughtful, being more careful, and reflecting. It's all really not really about the technique as much as paying attention and learning and kind of unpeeling that onion 1 layer at a time and improving little parts of your game and learning from your mistakes, right? And that's
Yes.
what gets rid of Groundhog Day.
Now, the one thing I want to make sure that we pop in there too, because it gets really easy to say all the things you're doing wrong, is you also have to do all these things about what's good about your game too. Journaling is a great example, right? I think most people, one of the things that turns people off of journaling is they feel like they're just tearing themselves apart and they don't like the process. Also do the same reflection for what's going well. Why am I hitting it better today? Why did I make a birdie on this hole, but I didn't make a birdie on the other one? Why on everything? And sometimes by focusing on the positives, you can learn just as much as focusing on the negatives.
Yeah.
It's easier to make changes off of negative.
Unfortunately, though, Jake, as a golf teacher, people shooting 100, they want to shoot 90. If they focus on what they do well, they're going to keep shooting what they shoot. You need to focus on the negative. You need to focus on what they need to change and make better.
Totally agreed. Totally agreed. But you still have to reflect on what's working well and maybe move in that direction, right?
Absolutely.
For example, if you're working on something, you have a good round, saying, what made me have a good round today? Why was today good? The next round, you can maybe replicate that feeling, right? Obviously.
Well, that also builds self-confidence. That builds optimism.
Yes.
You don't spend your life thinking of what's wrong and what else can I fix next, because it's a pretty demoralizing space to be in. But this show is about Groundhog Day of mistakes people are making. So you
for
kind
sure.
of got to focus on the mistakes they're making.
Absolutely. And most people don't focus on the mistakes they're making, and they have to. And I'm not saying that. It's just
Or changes they need to make, right?
yes. It's a process, and focus on the whole thing. You want to? I know we're like an hour in, but we want to talk money race pool for a little bit.
I don't know about time. That's why I love the podcast. We don't have to do time. So just a quick little few minutes here on money race pool. It's on TSN 1200 on Tee It Up. I've been doing that show for 25 years. You're a regular guest and have been for years. Since you've been listening to Tee It Up back when you were 3 years old on my Christmas show. We've been doing the money race pool for 23 years. Every year we have tiers. You pick players. You play all year long at kevinhaime.com, and you go. You have fun. You win prizes, or your friends make fun.
Yeah.
of you.
By the way, there's no cost to it, everybody. I think that's one of the fun things.
It's fun. It's free, and there's prizes.
Exactly. No
So
downside.
the deadline's Thursday. So we're gonna get this audio up, I think tomorrow, and we'll get the video up by maybe Wednesday. You won't have a long time to sign up, but you go to kevinhaime.com, you click on the golf pool icon, you pick your players. You really don't need any experience. Miss Piggy last year, where did she finish? Auntie Ann. Where did she finish? Mom's aunt.
Second or third. She was pretty high up.
Yeah,
there.
and knows
What's
nothing
your
about
best
golf.
finish? What's your best finish?
I think I was 23 years, Jake. I think I was in the top 10 once. I'm happy if I'm in the top 100 of the 7, 8, 900 people. Your Uncle Speck, John, has won twice.
Yeah, I've come second.
There have been a couple of guys win it twice. John's one. There's one other guy. Anyway, do your homework, everyone. Go to pgatour.com. Check out the stats. I always say in a Ryder Cup year, I like Europeans more than internationals as opposed to a President's Cup year. I like great putters. I like ATM machines because they're always out there. The Matt Kuchars, the Charles Howells, who are always the Jim Furyk's, always in the top 10.
Tony Finau and Webb Simpson coming off the last week.
And I like hot players, although the pool runs from now to the BMW Championship, from the Pebble Beach to the BMW Championship. No money they've accrued so far this year counts. So it all starts now. So if a guy's already won twice this year, that happened to me one year. Patton Kazire got really hot in the spring, and I picked him, and he never did another thing. So you have to do that. And I also lean towards younger players. I think younger players are hungrier. Jim Furyk has made $65 million and probably twice that off the course. So he may not get up at 6 a.m. to work on his putting, whereas Matthew Wolff might get up at 4 in the morning and practice for 10 hours because he wants to win a major. I'm not saying that's necessarily the case because Jim Furyk's more experienced than Matthew Wolff, so he might beat him anyway. But
and no one tries more stuff.
I
than
tend
Phil.
to like young guys who don't need these annoying reading glasses I'm putting on right now. All right, so this year we've changed it up a little bit. You've got the first tier. There's 10 guys in it. You pick 2.
Yes.
We've got then 4 tiers, I believe, with 20 players in it each, and you pick 2 in each of those categories.
Yes.
And then in your final category, your final tier, we've got everybody else, and you're going to pick 6. We call them wild cards because they're outside the top 90. But there are a heck of a lot of good players in that list.
Yeah, and we also curated the list. So anybody who maybe due to either PGA Tour status or certain things weren't on the list, but should be probably someone to look at, is on there as well. So I think it's going to be a very interesting pool.
What is it, Jake? I think there's more good players than ever because of the money all over the world. And
yeah, I think as the game has become more and more international, and we've talked about it on this podcast, the Tiger effect of turning golfers into athletes and the ever-growing chase for excellence and the equipment being an equalizer for the middle line players, it's deeper than ever. And it makes, I think, the pool more fun because it means that there's more...
we did it alphabetically by first name in each category, in each tier. But let's just run down the second tier very quickly, please. Players 11 through 30.
Yes.
Adam Scott, Bubba Watson, Ches Reavie, Francesco Molinari, Gary Woodland, Henrik Stenson, Hideki Matsuyama, Jason Day, Kevin Kisner, Louis Oosthuizen, Mark Leishman, Matt Kuchar, Patrick Reed, Paul Casey, Ricky Fowler, Sergio Garcia, Shane Lowry, Tommy Fleetwood, Tony Finau, and Webb Simpson. Isn't it funny? Tony and Webb are the last 2 guys in that list. And again, only alphabetically. Webb Simpson just won. How do you pick just 2 players in that 20 golfers?
That's really tough. Yeah, I don't
know that Jimmy Kroll, my buddy from Bella Colina there, where we were down broadcasting the radio show the last few weeks, picked Patrick Reed. He says, I don't have to like him, but he's a gritty player. So he picked Patrick Reed. Who would you pick in that category?
I don't know. I mean...
well, you better know soon. Deadline's Thursday morning.
I know,
at
I'm still
7 a.m.
finalizing. I've been writing notes on my sheets. I think
Sergio just played well in over in the Middle East.
Yeah, but I also have a thing about him. I think he's past caring enough.
Matt Kuchar's in there every week.
Yeah, I funnily enough, I think Tony Finau and Webb Simpson is an interesting dynamic duo. They're 2 completely opposite players. Tony's one of the longest players. Webb Simpson's 160th in driving distance. But
the other thing, I was looking at the putting stats too. Adam Scott is number 5 when I looked last week in putting inside 10 feet. Doesn't that surprise the heck out of you?
Yeah, because it does surprise the heck out of me.
I think we all think he can't putt.
Well, because he misses more really short ones than most guys do.
I don't know. It's weird. Anyway,
but
maybe that's changed now.
When it's those guys I think are interesting because neither win as much as you'd think they should. You could put Ricky in this category too, frankly. But
then you got DeChambeau with his new body. I mean, you've got all these young guys. I mentioned Matthew Wolff already. There are many others.
Colin Morikawa, Victor Hovland. I think there are a lot of young guys that are going to be interesting.
They are the high merchandised or marketed guys for sure. But anyway, so it's a Kevin Haime Money Race Pool. It's at kevinhaime.com. We want you to go to it. If you look in that last group, Jake, there are so many good players in that last group. And remember, everyone, people don't even have to be like. Look at this week as well. How about Lee Westwood and Graham McDowell have both won on the European Tour this year? If they play like that, which they can in a major or World Golf Championship, those monies count.
Yeah, that's something that's also for longtime pool players different. Now, as long as the money was earned on the PGA Tour, it counts. So traditionally, if a player had European Tour status but not PGA Tour status, we didn't count the money. Now we do. So you're right. Tommy Fleetwood or some of these guys that predominantly play on the Eddie Pepperell, who predominantly play on the European Tour but could make a major run very easily. They're interesting, risky but interesting picks, right? Less chances for money, but chances for big money.
Well, I'm just looking here. So in that last group, you've got Luke Donald, Lee Westwood. You got so many great players who
I know, but you just said you go young,
well,
and then you picked Luke Donald and Lee Westwood.
Well, I didn't pick them. I'm just saying. You got a bunch of Canadian. How about Bernd Wiesberger? He's in that group.
Yeah, that's a good one too.
Maverick McNeely, there's a young kid in that group. You got so many great young players and older players. Russell Henley is in that group. Some of them are in there because of injury. Some of them are in there because they had an off year. You never know what's going on off the golf course. But Victor Hovland, there he is in that group as well. Wyndham Clark, I just saw him on the leaderboard last week. So you got a lot of great players to choose from. You get to pick 6 in that last guy. And Zach Johnson's on that list. That's a weird one.
That is a weird one.
Anyway, there you go, everyone. So Kevin Haime Money Race Pool, do that. Let's make 2020 a better year. Let's be Bill Murray with the groundhog in the Jeep, having a little fun and changing some things. Let's reflect. I tell people, sit down and rank every one of your silos. Rank your ball striking, your swing. Tell me what's wrong with it. Why is it only 7 out of 10? Why isn't it a 10? What do you need to do to change it to make it a 10? Sit down and rank everything. How's your putting? How's your short game? How's your equipment? How's your mental work? Decide what to attack, get organized, and do it. And you can definitely play better this year. Well, I guess we're no different than a personal trainer, right? Who's trying to inspire people and so passionate about them and want them to just do some things. And Jake, they're such simple things. Sometimes it's less work. I see people banging their head against the wall.
Yeah.
Slicing and trying every trick in the book and buying
point.
every new club instead of just getting into a little bit of a thoughtful process. If you, just like your business budget, your house budget, if you get a little organized, you write some things down, you get a little thoughtful, you practice more focused and with more attention to detail, you will get way better. It's as easy as that, but we just got to convince people to do it.
Agreed. That's the never-ending battle of the golf pro, isn't it?
It is, the teaching pro, boy. All right, that'll do it for today. Great show. Lots of stuff in there. Lots of meat on that bone, which I like. We'll be back again in a month with a March. Oh, my God, it'll be March, Jake, for our next show. And then we'll move back into bi-weekly. I think we'll have to figure that one out, but we'll do that. So we'll be another month, everybody. We're in the Superdome teaching here in Ottawa. If you want to work on your skill set and the path of your club and a few things, I love it because it's 80 yards of ball flight, so you can actually see what the golf ball's doing in the air. So we teach in the Superdome in the winter.
Yeah, it's way better
we'll be back in a month with lots more stuff. Good luck in the pool. Little $20 side bet.
I'm in.
Okay, little $20 side bet. There you go. Thanks for listening, everybody. Get out there and play some better golf.